Okay. I'll just say like a little spiel. So I am Danny or Danielle. I work at OK Comics. I kind of do a little bit of everything. And we are now starting a podcast and a Q&A session with Darcy Van Polgeest. Is that right, Darcy?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And Ian Bertram, and we'll be talking about Little Bird and Precious Metal and all of the things in between. But yeah, thank you for joining me, guys.
Thanks for
So
You're
having us.
welcome. Yeah.
I've got a selection of questions that I'm going to kind of work through. But where did the idea for Little Bird come from? Who kind of approached who? Because I know it was in the runnings for a really long time.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I
Darcy,
approached
go ahead.
Ian with it. And but it's so hard to know how it started as an idea because it was a collection of things, which is sort of how all ideas start for me. There's an image, of Little Bird, there's a scene, there's a line of dialogue. None of them might have anything, there's obviously political elements. My family history on my mother's side has always been quite active in social and political activism, and so I just grew up, with my grandparents in Greenpeace and protesting, deforestation, and that was just the part. I'd go when I was like 8 and videotape the protests and stuff like. So I just grew up in that environment. So I think it wasn't so much like, oh, I want to tell a really political story, or I want to, you know, um, I want to write about, you know, social environmental issues or anything like that. It was just a part of the DNA. But yeah, so it just sort of started as a collection of ideas, and then there was a very short time where I entertained it as like trying to make like a short film, which would have just been the first issue. And I worked in film at the time, and all the producers I worked with were like, "You're crazy. There's no way we could do this. There's no amount of funding on Earth, or let alone in Canada, that you could pull something like this off." And then, my first love was always comics, basically for my whole life. But they seemed like a magical thing that just got printed and showed up on shelves. It never occurred to me that you could make one. Um, and but then that came up, and that idea was like, oh, I wonder if this could be that. And I went on the hunt for an artist, and found Ian on DeviantArt, which we talked about
Wow.
in the last interview. But and reached out to him, and I think I just sent you the script for the first issue, and
Yeah.
and then it just went from there. And it was really, and then that first issue went through like probably 100 revisions as the ideas grew, and Ian put his own 2 bits into it, and I became more familiar with his art and trying to figure out how to, tell a story like through his eyes and his world a little bit, or just play to his strengths, I guess is the easier way to put it. And it just sort of evolved like that.
That's really nice. So when you were coming up with it, you kind of say that you had loads of ideas around the issue. Did the universe come first for you then, or was the story like always at the forefront?
No, yeah, it was definitely the characters, and the story, the sort of core story. And then there was definitely world building there, but it wasn't really until I started working with Ian that the world building really took shape for what you see it as now. Like um, I had like a slightly different idea of what like the mods might look like, but then just even as the first few pages came in, which were like the original idea was they looked more, human. They didn't look quite as quite as strange as they ended up looking, because Axe is a mod and Little Bird is a mod too, and the way we sort of ended up doing it is it's like a spectrum. So you can be modified in multiple ways. It can just be internal, it can be external, and long story short, seeing Ian's designs and where he wanted to play, essentially we were able to get weirder. Now I can write things like it's a person but their face is floating in front of their head, and and stuff like that. So yeah, it was definitely, the world building was a big evolution during the creation of the book, for sure.
I love that. It's having read things like House of Penance and things like that, I can see the ways in which Ian would probably play with the world building, which is really nice to see, like, even more in Little Bird and Precious Metal. Obviously, you mentioned already that it tackles some pretty heavy topics like civil unrest and oppression, and you've had like family ties to activism and things like that. When you were creating the world, did you have any kind of real world influences, like historical or current um, kind of things, when you created characters like Bishop or the world of New Vatican?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite the topic is kind of on the forefront now, but I had worked on documentaries that involved interviewing elders who had gone through residential school system in Canada, and First Nations elders, to be clear. And so that was definitely, like it was just something that had always it was a part of my life at the time where I started writing the scripts, but also was just like just a burning injustice that inside of me from even the time when I was a kid, because my mom and my grandparents talked a lot about it. I have cousins who are First Nations, and it was just a topic in the house, and every time it came up, I just felt this anger, and then anger towards the church in general, and the idea of colonization, all which are like much more talked about these days. It's more in the open, and so those ideas sort of what I didn't want to do is create a sci-fi that a science fiction story that just happened out in space, and it's just species X, oppressed by species D. I was trying to think of like, oh, how do you do big, crazy sci-fi, but like rooted in our actual world? And the best villain I could come up with was, someone like Bishop, that felt somewhat real to me. And yeah, so that's kind of how that started.
Yeah. So I guess you've both been kind of enveloped in this world for like 10 plus years now. Did you always plan to return to it? Were you always planning to do Precious Metal, or is that something that kind of evolved as you worked together?
Sorry, I feel like I keep answering. These all seem to be starter questions
No, please
for the
go
moment.
for the.
But Ian, jump in at any point. But no, it wasn't always the plan. But I think so what happened is Ian did. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ian, but I think you did the first and second issue for Little Bird, and then you went and did House of Penance, and then came back and did 3 through 5, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, I did the
Something
first
along the
issue.
line.
Yeah, it was first issue, then House of Penance, then came back to Little Bird and did the rest of the issues. Maybe some in issue 2 beforehand as well. Yeah, I'm not exactly.
Yeah,
sure
I think there was some, but well, maybe it didn't coincide with that then, but I do remember just seeing the first illustrated images of I guess what I'm trying to say is by the time I finished the second issue, I started to feel like there was another story that I wanted to tell, and that I wanted to expand the universe. I think Ian and I maybe talked about it, hypothetically, around that time. And then once the third issue was done and Sarge was involved in the story, I was like, I think he's the one, that I think he came to me as such a complete package for a character that only is in it for a small amount of time. And I couldn't stop myself from continuing to sort of like co-write that story in the back of my head as we finished Little Bird. So by the time Little Bird was done and we were discussing like, hey, should we return to this world? Should we do something completely different? I was like, well, we could return to this world and, actually I kind of have it all figured out. What do you think of this? And then, there was a short break and then we kind of dove into it.
I was really excited when I saw the announcement on Facebook, I think, and me and Jared in the shop were just saying like, who could it be? Are we going to get young Axe? Are we going to get young Sarge? And then we got both, and we were both really happy about it. Yeah. I'm just looking to see where we are at. So obviously,
sorry, I was going to say the trick for that for Ian and I both, we both felt the same, is that we didn't want to just tell a prequel because it just felt like that would almost be too easy, like we wanted to make sure the prequel was married with a standalone story so that because I think we generally both sort of dislike prequels in general, because it just feels like, oh, all this mysterious stuff we built up that sort of like front loads this world and the story. Let us just tell you what it is now, and that's no fun. So it had to be its own story with its own background and not just be there to say like, oh yeah, this is how this world came to be. So that is a part of it, but at the forefront, it's really a new story,
I've been reading it as it released in issues, and it definitely stands alone as its own story, and it keeps a lot of the dreamlike qualities that Little Bird has, which I thought was, I don't know how you do that. It's so masterfully written because you are waiting for each issue as they arrive, because it's just different every time you read it and you pull something new from it. And I reread both recently for the OK Comics book club, and I was still like, I still felt the same that I did 6 years ago when it first came out. It's a really big testament to you both.
Thank you.
So when you work with film and things, obviously you do things like storyboard. I don't work in film, but I like films, and you do things like storyboarding, and you have like a kind of visual image of in your mind of how you want things to play. How do you balance that when you're writing a script? Because obviously you want Ian's artwork to speak for itself as well. How do you balance that?
Very delicately. No, it's yeah, that's where the sort of the collaboration hits the pavement in a sense. Like I definitely have I think in images, so I have specific ideas, or not obviously I have specific ideas, but I see it a specific way. And so I try to strike the balance of getting that across without it dictating, and then generally Ian will take that and just, sometimes he does it because we've worked together so long. Sometimes I feel like we both he knows a lot of the time what I'm talking about and will work that in, or do it that way. And then sometimes he does it like a completely different way. And 9 times out of 10, I'm like, that's so much better than what I had in mind. And 1% of the time we have to get on the phone and argue. But that's pretty rare. So yeah, Ian, from your perspective, how do you
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that, we've kind of touched on a few different things, but, one of the things I really love about working with Darcy is that he really is kind of a lot of the time, it feels to me like kind of catering a lot of the imagery to what he thinks I would want to draw the most, which obviously never at the expense of the story, right? Story is always the most important, like what we're always headed towards, like the North Star. But a lot of the stuff, like I see what he's written and I'm like, oh my God, like of course he knows that I want to draw this, right? And it feels like it's like a great treat, I'm like, oh yes, so tasty, but I also think that, and you mentioned it too, but we've been working together for so long and we have from the jump, from the very beginning, like so many influences that are similar and just thematically and mood wise, the things that we're really interested in. Like we'll just share images back and forth, like things that we're inspired by, and like never once and am I like, oh, this is shit, right? It's always like, oh my God, yes. Like there's a weird hive mind kind of aspect at this point. So when I see something that's written that is so clearly up my alley, I'm like, yes. And when I see something that's written where I'm like, oh, I got to adapt a little bit, like it always feels natural, And then again, like maybe the 1% of time where I'm like, you know what? Let me talk about this with Darcy and we'll talk about it and we'll come up with almost always a way better solution. You know what I mean? Or like,
Sure.
or he'll walk me through it and I'll be like, oh, now I know exactly what you're talking about here, right? And it just makes sense. But yeah, there's just a lot of freedom, as the artist, and a lot of input that I'm able to give, that is really rare, I think, in comics, and I'm really grateful for it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's when you work with someone as good as Ian, it's a tightrope because it's like you don't want to get in the way of their own genius, but it's at the same time it's also you have an obligation and a duty to explain what's on the page and how it's working, So it's just a matter of walking that line. And I think the one thing that sort of really helps is we both have like a obsession with mood and atmosphere and tension. Like those things are always kind of, oh, hello, kitty. Those things are always like a driving force. And so and those are really difficult things to write and very difficult things to, so if you're not connected with someone who just sort of innately understands that experience, it's difficult to do. Yeah.
Sorry, I got distracted by my cat.
That's okay. It's a cute cat.
It's so annoying. I mean, I've done interviews where people are like, oh, like look at this is my baby. It's like you're like, oh, it's such a cute baby. You know what I mean? Like such a cute.
Oh, like an actual baby.
Yeah, like an actual baby. Yeah.
Oh, weird. That's strange.
I mean, very cute baby. Obviously, babies are pretty cute, but this guy, his
Not as
his
cute as
name's
cats.
Raman Ra.
Not as cute.
Couldn't agree more. Could not
That's
agree
a
more. Yes.
strong name for a cat.
It is. Yeah. Sorry,
I'm
I
surprised my
derailed.
dog's been quiet, to be honest.
Say again?
I have a dog, so I'm surprised she's being quiet. She's a bit of a barker, so I'm just waiting for her to yap at me for whatever she needs. But yeah, it's nice to see
What's her
people.
name?
Ivy.
It's a great name for a dog. Ivy. Yeah.
My dog might make an appearance too. We'll see.
Yeah, I think it's nice when people's pets and children come on videos because you're human at the end of the day. You have lives. You're not just
machines
on a pedestal.
Oh, totally.
I mean,
yeah.
we feel like machines a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously everyone has different aspects of that, in their lives, but I feel like, you really gotta, especially with comics, like it's such a weird kind of like solitary thing. You just kind of gotta like be like, okay, this chunk of time I will be completely alone doing this thing, and then you kind of like shut off whatever else is going on, you do that, and then afterwards you're like, okay, I can be a human being again. It's a very weird type of,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that is for everyone
I think it's
different
a
aspects.
solitary it's a solitary job to do, but also a very solitary hobby to have because you read alone and you internalize everything that you're reading, but not everybody talks about it. And I think we should talk about it because it's special.
Yeah, I think that's part of the attraction for me is the solitude, to be honest.
Yeah,
It's like at the end of the day, I'm still 12 years old, you know, reading comics in my room on my own. And that's like, that's sort of like where I'm always trying to get back to, I think, a lot of the time. Even in writing them, is just like, am I getting that feeling again? You know, that feeling of like discovering something alone, you know. Yeah.
yeah. I guess we're our truest selves when we're on our own. So it's a nice way to just honor yourself and have that time.
Totally. But it's fun to discuss too, you know, and that part happens online a lot now, which I guess is cool, right? That's all right. It's a way for people to connect with like people like yourself, you know,
Yeah.
that you might not otherwise bump into.
Also, there's so many like weird examples in the world where like, you know, like I'll be in an environment that's not a comics environment, and you know, inevitably someone will be, oh yeah, what do you do? And I'll be like, I draw comics, and sometimes people are like, oh, okay, you know, and other times people are like, oh my god, and we will have a conversation about comics where, I don't know, where we'll just be like, you know, so if someone doesn't really read comics all the time, it'll be like, you know, larger, super well-known books like, you know, Dark Knight, stuff like that. But if you find someone who like really reads comics, it's this weird like, I don't know. You feel like you just press your foreheads together and like download the information back and forth. Like it's so like fascinating. It's like this weird hidden secret thing where you're like, oh my god, you too. It's a really special experience, I think. And it's, you know, depending on what situation you're in, it's either rare or not. But it is cool, and it is like a immediate bond, which is really amazing.
Yeah.
I find too, people don't even realize that people write comics. Like if they're not familiar with it, you know. So if they ask and I say, they're like, oh, and then you know if someone else was to come up, they'd be like, oh, Darcy draws comics, and I'm like, no, I don't draw the comics. I just write them, and they have no idea that people do
You've
that.
done drawings,
you know?
for me.
Yeah,
I've had some scenes
hopefully
where I'm like,
those
Darcy,
never.
this is just not working for me. Like I can't visualize what are you talking about? And Darcy will do like stick figure drawings, and I so want to print them. They are
He
beautiful.
threatens it every time. Oh, we gotta share this. I'm like, dude, no.
We have to share
They should be in the back matter.
We should put it in the back matter. Thank you.
They're literally stick figures. There's nothing to look at.
Tom King makes
like,
millions with his stick figures.
It's true. He does. Yeah, more often it's not. It's just like composition or something like that. But there's nothing to really look at.
It's beautiful.
I'm glad you think so, man. I appreciate that.
I guess art is subjective.
There you go.
It is.
So
sorry, I feel like I completely derailed us. Do you want to?
Yeah, where were we?
I know we have some
absolutely
questions.
Fine. So you've obviously worked for a long time, and you've got this really beautiful creative dynamic and collaboration going on. Did you ever kind of feel like your relationship and creative collaboration was evolving as the years went on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I mentioned sort of the hive mind aspect, but that is tuned in, you know. A lot of the time I'll send Darcy a text, or Darcy will send me a text where he'll mention a thing that I think that I'm thinking about on my own that I haven't mentioned to him. and he'll be like, oh my God, I was just thinking about this and I have this cool solution, or vice versa. And it really, I don't know, I'm the older I get, I just know nothing about how anything works in the universe. So who knows? Maybe we are
It
connected in a
does.
larger sense.
It
But
is freaky at times. It really is
weird.
freaky
Yeah.
at times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool.
I
It's
can't
like
really explain it.
yeah. So I think certainly we've gotten, weirdly close in how we conceive of things and the world, and yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
it's also just partly um, the learning process of Ian learning about more about the things I write and why I write them and how I write them, and same thing with me learning about his art. Like he could probably predict what might happen in the next scene with me now, whereas nobody else could, or I might be, I could predict how he might want to illustrate something or lay something out, just based on the experience of working together, and we've very obviously influenced each other too. So it does eventually just become a hive mind, quite literally, just through a process of proximity for such a long period of time. Yeah. It's gotten easier and it's gotten more fun. I think that's a big part of it. Yeah.
I think also so much of it is, sorry to cut you off, just so much of it is like trust, where it's like, if I'm working on an issue and Darcy is maybe working through some of the later issues or what, what I mean, where it's like we have like an exact script and then we have outline, and I don't want you can talk more about your process, right? But like I don't have an exact perfect idea maybe of how a scene will play out 5 issues later, right? But I just trust so much that what is being asked of me will translate in all the ways that I hope it will to the best story possible. And just we've been working together long enough that like that is how it works. And so, at no point am I like, why am I drawing this? Right. I'm just like, yeah, I'm drawing this, right? Like this is what is needed at this point, even if it feels strange, where I'm like, oh, I don't necessarily know why this character is doing this in this moment, right? This specific action, right? But I feel like the more trust that's involved in that, the more I can just kind of fall into making the best work I can, right? And I think it's probably maybe similar, right? Where it's like, like in Precious Metal, right? It's like, why is there an eyeball curtain, right? Like, why is the curtain made out of eyeballs, right? And Darcy's like, yeah, I guess it is now. You know what I mean? Like, that's so fun. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the exact script called for, but there was definitely like a curtain, you know what I mean? And then it became like an eyeball curtain, right? And it's like, that's really fun.
It was not an eyeball curtain in the script. I know that.
Right, but it's like it was a curtain, and then the cool thing is like I know that you're okay with me doing the weirdest thing that I can think of in that moment, which is making it like a weird, intricate, like a bunch of eyeballs tied to strings and stuff like that, right? And I think that one of the things that's really fun is that and I've worked with different writers, and I think that I've worked with some amazing writers, and a lot of them have like very, very, very specific visions that are phenomenal and work out really well if you follow that exactly. And then I've worked with sort of everyone in between, and like working with Darcy, it's one of those things where I know where I can improvise, and at this point, it's just like I don't necessarily. If I have a question, I will ask, obviously, but for the most part, I'm like, oh, curtain, that can be any type of curtain, that sort of thing, where it's like it's just fun. And I think the main thing is sort of like I don't feel like there's any limitations in what I can draw, which is a really cool feeling. Yeah, I don't know what the question was at this point. I've been rambling.
Big part of setting up the world that it takes place in, because if the world doesn't allow for it, then it wouldn't feel right, you know. But yeah, and just the trust thing, the trust that, like, even if something doesn't make sense on that page, that 2 issues later it will, you know. And I think in the beginning there was more back and forth just in terms of like, well, why am I doing this, you know? And I would say, well, because in issue 5 we re-see this moment, but it's from this person's perspective, or you know, whatever it is. And oh, okay. And then now it's just kind of like, I think, yeah, we've just built the trust is more there, because it's, you know, they are strange stories in a lot of ways, and so it does take an extra level of trust, that it will come together in the end, in at least in so much as we want it to, you know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think it's really nice because I know quite a few people that are either fledgling comic illustrators or are new to the industry, and I know that they don't get to play quite like Ian does, and I think it's really beautiful that you have that opportunity to do that, because I think people would thrive a lot better if they got to do the things that they feel good doing, and not just do the issues that are going to keep paying their bills while they figure out how to work on their own things. So it's really nice that you guys found your groove, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's like advice I would give to. I try not to give advice, but I guess if I had advice for, you know, someone just starting their comic writing career, is when you're selecting an artist, you have to ask, if it's not completely apparent on the page, you have to figure out where their strengths and interests are, and write for it, you know. Not only because will the work be better, but because it will be an enjoyable experience for them, and there's simply not enough money or any other incentive to do it other than to enjoy the work, you know. And you don't want it to become a grind for the artist, where every day they sit down and, like, you know, the thing that they love is crime fiction, and, you know, they're drawing like their 7th spaceship. It's just not going to go well for anybody involved, you know. So yeah.
So with that in mind, did you ever feel like you kind of hit a wall creatively, or like you experienced burnout? And with that, what kept you going?
Is this for me or for Ian?
For
I guess
both
it
of
could be
you.
for both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, Darcy. Yeah. I mean, I can answer too. I mean,
the answer for Ian is yes. Period.
I've never had burnout once. So I don't even know what it is.
I don't get writer's block, so I get. Well, what was the first part of the question? That was kind of the last part. Sorry, I don't want to miss it.
Sorry, I'm just checking where I am. So both books are really intense in the writing and in the illustration. So did you ever hit a wall creativity? I can't say the word.
Creatively.
And
yeah.
how do you push through that burnout and maybe the doubt of what you're doing?
Generally speaking, on my side of things, if I hit a wall, it's because I don't understand it. I don't understand what I'm doing. That's the only way I think anybody hits a wall in writing, honestly. So, you know, if you're writing historical fiction and you hit a wall, it's like you don't understand. You haven't read enough books. Like, you don't understand what it is that you're writing about, And that, you know, if you understand if you know the world so well that you can walk around in it, you'll never run out of ideas or places to go. You know, if you don't, you will find yourself at the edge of your own knowledge and not understanding where to go. I mean, I do research for these books, but it's definitely equal dream time, you know, time to just dream and think. And so anytime I've hit a wall in sort of the Little Bird Precious Metal world, it's because I didn't give myself the time to dream, you know, about it. And so that just means the work is to like go for long walks and allow my imagination to wander, you know, because writing itself is a grind, you know, but the dreaming and the mind wandering is not, you know. And you can sometimes you put so much pressure on yourself to do the grind that you forget, oh yeah, I need a day. I need a day just to like go look at flowers and the formations of clouds in the sky, and then I find myself getting the answer, or I'm refueled, kind of thing. But it's character driven. So for me, I'm always just thinking about people and why do people say the things they say and why do they not say the things they say, and I spend a lot of time just thinking about that. But yeah, Ian, how about you? What happens when you hit the wall?
First of all, I love the description of, you know, knowing the world so well that you can wander through it, and then you hit when you hit a wall as a writer, it's because you've reached the end of that world, like the edge of that world. Really, yeah, really cool. I love that. I think that for me, with the type of work that I do, it's so detailed and it's so like kind of all consuming that sometimes I'll just, you know, I'd say that usually what happens is the first third of the book, I'm more energized than I've ever been. I got nothing but ideas and inspiration, right? And I'm flowing. I'm like, this is gonna be so cool, all this stuff. And then sort of it works its way through the second third of being like, oh fuck, like I'm halfway through a project. I've committed to a style that is absurd in the amount of time that it takes me. You know, my back hurts. I'm a hermit. I'm losing my mind. This sort of weird in between. And then the last third, I'm like, oh man, this is cake. This is so easy. You know, like so excited about all the work that I've done, you know, that sort of thing. And it's consistent. That's always how it happens. So for me, the burnout is, like I said, sort of the middle third. And with that, it's just willpower. Just, you know, like, okay, you know, I go to work every day. I work 6 hours. This is what I do, right? And it's very like maybe this sounds a little harsh, but like sometimes it needs to be detached from the joy of making the work, right? It needs to just be, if you're basing it on how much joy you're receiving from it, that's a difficult thing, right? Where it's like, if you're not receiving that, then are you, you know, is it worth doing, right? And it's like, no, it's not about that. It's about having a North Star, which is like finishing the project and just sort of like shooting an arrow towards that, and then just tying a string around you and letting the arrow kind of pull you in that direction. You know what I mean? It's sort of the feeling. Yeah.
That makes sense. We've kind of, I'm just jumping around because quite a few of these questions have been answered as we chat.
Oh yeah.
One of the things.
Sorry, I just want to tie into that. Like, one thing is that I think too, we've gotten good about reaching out to each other during those times too. You know, like sometimes if I'm up against a wall on something, I'll just call Ian and I'll just say, it's this, but it's missing this, and you know, and he'll be like, well, have you ever, you know, did you think of that or what, you know, and it's it's not like it's his job to give me the answer, but he can sort of like reload, you know, inspiration into me, and I definitely do that, try to do that for him, especially during that mid part. We'll just talk more often and just try and like sort of, you know, you have to borrow from people sometimes the energy it takes to
Yeah, we're
keep
currently
going.
in that mid part for me
Yeah,
for our current
yeah,
book.
yeah,
So I'm very familiar with the feeling, and
yeah.
certainly reached out to Darcy a handful of times, being like, "What are we doing?" You know what I mean? And it's like, I
What are we
know
doing
we do,
again? Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
it's a very rhetorical question, but it's nice to. You know, you mentioned solitude. You mentioned sort of that, and I think that solitude is a beautiful thing, but if it becomes loneliness, like it's a very thin line between the two. And you know, I think that collaborating with Darcy, like we're very good at reaching out when it slips over a little bit, you know, because like
Mm.
I don't want him wandering through a lonely place, right? Neither does he. So it's like, you know, like it's just a reciprocal sort of um, thing. But yeah, currently in that, uh,
Yeah.
we're almost out of it.
almost. You're,
Very
I mean,
close.
very
Almost in
close.
the last third, dude.
We're teasing now. We're teasing.
Oh right,
It's nice
yeah,
that you can weather the storm together. It's
it
not
is.
everybody
Yeah,
gets.
totally. Yeah, no, it's, I mean, we've been through it enough that it's, and Precious Metal is so long, you know, absurdly long. So there was probably like two or three of those mid periods as opposed to just one. But
Yeah.
So long.
yeah,
It's 300 pages long.
yeah,
Yeah, the issues are a lot chunkier, and you have an
it's
extra issue. It's 6 issues instead of 5.
yeah,
Oh
and that
yeah,
sixth issue
it's a
was
lot.
like, um, yeah, I'm trying to think. I do have. Sorry,
The
I'm gonna
last
get
issue
up
is
for a
like
second.
52 pages.
Yeah.
Maybe more. Maybe it's like 60. I
Yeah,
don't know. It's huge.
it's crazy. But yeah, we have them. You'll have these next week, but there it is for anybody um,
Yep. They
curious.
are on the way.
And it is a big book. Like, you know, comparing it to Little Bird, it's
Yeah. See,
yeah,
I have the hardcover of Little Bird instead of the
yes,
paperback. So I wonder what the thickness will be like in comparison, but it's
yeah,
I
pretty
exciting.
really
close.
hope at some point we can
Um,
do a hardcover.
yeah,
Don't do that to me.
a lot of people are asking, and it's just a budgetary thing, you know. And then with these tariffs, it's like, oh man, because apparently all hardcovers are done in China, or at least that's typically. So it might not come right away, but I mean, I don't see any way we don't end up doing a hardcover at some point. It's just really hard to say when and how at this point.
Yeah, it's difficult as well because there are like worldwide shortages on card and things like that. Like it's well known that we can't get cardboard backing boards. Like they just don't exist
Oh, is that
anymore.
right? Okay.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
they're
Yeah.
impossible. They're probably worth
Oh
more than
man.
Lego.
Wow. Good to know.
Yeah, wild, wild time.
So when you guys are working on the scripts and you're working on the artwork, who decides the kind of panels? Is that all you, Ian? And do you have kind of control over the speech bubbles as well? Because there are quite a few really clever speech bubbles, specifically in Little Bird, where like later on in the book there is an empty speech bubble because the life's been snuffed out of that character, and it kind of reminds me of like Stan Sakai and his Usagi Yojimbo series, where each character has like if they've died, they've got a skull above their head in their little speech bubble, and I like those like little tiny touches.
That's really cool. I didn't make that comparison. Yeah, totally. Um, that I feel like there's a few parts in that question. The like lettering aspect, I'm gonna leave to Darcy because he is so hands-on in that process. Him and Aditya, just I'm not involved in that. I mean, if they have a crazy idea, right, they'll be like, "Hey, are you cool with this?" And almost always yes. And same with Hassan and Precious Metal, right? But in terms of the paneling, Darcy will have a breakdown, right? It'll be like, Sarge walks into a bar, picks up a cup, talks to, and it'll be like panel 1, Sarge walks into a bar, panel 2, picks up a cup, panel 3, right? And it's like, I know how many panels we want on the page. It doesn't say, sometimes it will say like, pretty rarely, I'd say. Sometimes it'll be like a low angle, right? But usually it almost never angles. It's mostly just like what is happening with the characters, the mood, sort of what they're feeling, what they're thinking about, and obviously the dialogue. And then in terms of composition, that's, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's almost always up to me, right? How it's composed. And I think there's
I'll put it in there sometimes, but I'll rarely, Ian is free to do his own thing, and and it's just not something. It's
like
unless it's a POV right thing. Yeah. Unless it leads to a reveal,
Yeah, exactly.
Like I'll quite often maybe emphasize what's not in the image. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Because it's like you're trying to reveal certain things at certain times. So it's just, just in terms of pacing. I think when I write panels, so I'll write how many panels are on a page, and that's really about trying to add a level of control over the pacing and what we may or may not see. And Ian will quite often change it, or there's a conversation. But anyways, Ian, I cut you off there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to put it. Every once in a while, I think with Precious Metal, one of the things that was really cool is because we kind of have this weird ever expanding page count, and we just decided we are going to make the best book that we possibly can. It doesn't matter how long it takes, which is an insane idea, right? It's like,
I don't really recommend
it. Just makes the book. No, never again. It's just one of those things where it's like, well, I'll never say never, but I think we made the best story we possibly could. But it was definitely one of those things where, if in the page it was like, oh, this is a 3-panel page, I'd like maybe call Darcy and I'd be like, dude, what if we made like a splash page here, right? And I can't think of a specific example. Maybe that never happened exactly like that, but it'll be things where it's like, hey, maybe we could add a panel here, or maybe we could, how do you feel about expanding this scene, and vice versa, right? Like Darcy would reach out to me and be like, hey, how do you feel about an extra page here? Or like, what do you think? Do you think the scene needs a little more? Like, it was just very kind of like back and forth in that way. So with Precious Metal, it was very much like, yes, there was a breakdown of panels, and unless it was one of those things where either one of us thought maybe we could use a little extra here, or maybe another panel, right? It was pretty much adhered to the panel breakdowns. Maybe adding a panel here or there if we talked about it, type of thing. But then I'll throw it over to Darcy for the lettering, because like Darcy and Aditya on Little Bird and Darcy and Hassan on Precious Metal, absurd. Like the amount of work that they both put into it, and like the level of creativity, like exactly like that word balloon that you're talking about. Like who does that?
Yeah,
it's so cool. Like I certainly. Oh, and sorry, one more thing. I'm kind of rambling a little bit. I am so disrespectful to the letterers in how I draw. It's not intentional, but I do not consider even a little, unless it's like there's a panel that's like there's going to be 3 different dialogue, word balloons that are a lot of being spoken. I will kind of add to that, but for the most part, I'm just like, well, I kind of want to do a big image here, or kind of want to do, like I don't respect it as much as I should.
There's a lot of bobbing and weaving.
Darcy and the letterer to work with, and they're great. And never once has the letterer mentioned it. They're very sweet. Both Aditya and Hassan are great for that. I apologize.
Yeah, they're very good at like
such bad
finding
behavior.
creative solutions in that way. And I mean, like honestly, like 80-90% of the creative solutions that comes up in lettering comes from them. You know, like I might have, there will be things that I will write in, but for the most part, they're just two incredible artists in their own right, doing their own thing. I think with that blank one, it was actually, I got it, you know, just because you brought it up specifically, I got it, and then I was like, looked at it and I was like, you know, just take the word out and just have it be. So there is like some back and forth where we come up with some little stuff, but most of the time it's like, with Hassan specifically with Precious Metal, he's always trying new things. Like, he is so experimental and so innovative. Aditya's stuff I find is like a little more grounded, and I love it for that reason too. And Hassan is a little more experimental. He's kind of pushing the boundaries a bit more, and so a lot of times it's actually me like kind of, you know, pulling it back, like taking the stuff that really works and then asking him to kind of pull back on the rest of it, which he's so not precious about any of that, you know. Like, the thing I love about Hassan is he totally gets it. Like, he knows what we're doing, and I think he knows that for every book that he works on. So he'll be like, yeah, I'm going to push it to 100, and then you're going to ask me to back off on half of it, and then it will all be great, you know. And that's kind of like the process with Hassan. Or another moment I liked is I had, you know, when Sarge gets like kidnapped by a few of the rebels at the beginning, he's tied up at the docks, and like he's saying fuck, and then they hit him. I was like, oh, maybe we just take that CK and throw it into the hit so you can see it kind of like flying out of his mouth. And like there are certain letters that like you could give that piece to and it wouldn't work, but like Hassan just accelerates, you know, excels, pardon me, at that kind of like visual storytelling when it comes to lettering, and it just like works. So all kinds of fun stuff like that. But he'll just do stuff that's totally his own, you know, and it's like, oh, I would have never have thought of that. And it looks incredible. So, I mean, for me, it's like, I work with everyone, but I work with everyone on a one-to-one basis too, right? Like, I work one-on-one with Ian, I work one-on-one with Hassan, I work one-on-one with Matt. I mean, Matt is probably the person that I have the least amount of contact with. Like, first of all, he's been doing it for, you know, a gazillion years. So I'm not going to tell him anything he hasn't heard before. And so it's more just like story stuff. Like there will be some story on everything I've worked on. There's been some piece of the story being told through color, you know. With Precious Metal, it's like the pink light that forms the boxes, and there's like hints of it in other places in the book for a specific reason. And so I would write, probably even in like all caps or bold, that in the script so that it doesn't get missed. But other than that, it's like it's not that I don't care. It doesn't. It's just, you know, it always looks good, and I have almost no input on that kind of stuff. And we've gotten good at sort of like figuring out like, hey, let's try and place objects in a scene that create light, you know. I'm always trying to write in fires. I try to put like fire in every scene, and Ian does a good job of sort of like policing that and being like, dude, I don't think we need another campfire
Too
scene.
much fire.
Maybe but I do
That's
love
what
people
elements, right? He loves water, he loves fire, he loves wind, he loves nature in general, right?
I'm a big nature guy.
Yeah, a big nature guy. But yeah, a lot
But
of
stuff
fire.
that sort of like that creates a situation for lighting, so that the colorist isn't having to like just make believe cool light. It's like, oh no, I'm looking, there's a fire that is the source of light in this scene, and it's a dramatic source of light,
And Matt does that so well. Like his
yeah, and
ability
you do
to
it so well. Like, yeah,
like his ability to do lighting is unreal. I mean, like,
yeah,
I've never
it's a
really seen
tricky
anything
thing.
like it. Like the feeling of the glow of the fire. Like I'm constantly blown away by how he does it. I'm not really sure how he actually does it, but it is really, it's so impressive. There's a bunch of different examples of it, but like specifically the fire is always mind blowing to me. Like it really feels like it's, I don't know. Like, I mean, what do you think? I mean, like, certainly to
yeah,
me,
no, totally.
I'm so close to it, but
There's a reason and I become obsessed with small things too, like the fire. So it's like, and then I find myself keep writing about it, and sometimes too much. Like I said, like I did have a scene in Precious Metal that there was already like kind of a campfire scene, and I think I had a second one, and Ian was like, we kind of already have a campfire scene. I'm like, I know, but it looks so good. So, but you're right, I'll figure out something else, like,
oh yeah, I remember that.
yeah, or just even like the twisting leaf, motif.
Yeah.
I find myself continually going back to that.
That's
Also,
such
again,
a funny story. Do you mind if I like? So,
no,
Danielle. So
I don't know
basically,
what you're going to say, but go for it.
I was So I was on a vacation. It was a horrible vacation. Shit, I won't get into specifics, but it was really really rough for a lot of different reasons. And I was just kind of in this weird kind of state. And then Darcy calls me or texts me. And he's like, "Hey, do you have a minute to talk?" And basically describes to me. So I'm getting ahead of myself. There's a double page spread in Little Bird of like these tiny panels of this leaf falling, and then the big beautiful like dream tree, right? And Darcy calls me and he's like, "I had this crazy dream about these leaves in panels falling sort of musically throughout the scene. And I think you actually sent me a drawing of it. And it was one of those things where it just like, I feel like this is such a tangent, but I feel like we were talking about fire, nature, right? Leaves, that's where my mind went to.
Yeah.
But it really I feel like unlocked a lot of things that we have played with since then in terms of like the motif, the nature, maybe the focus on those small moments like the leaf falling. And it's just such a weird sort of, it literally came from a dream, and it is about a dream in the book, and it just felt very symbiotic and cool. Maybe symbiotic's the wrong word, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question, Danielle? Oh, sorry, Darcy, go ahead.
No,
please.
go
I told the story. I want to hear what you. I feel like is that right? That's how it works.
No, that's totally. Yeah. No, I had a dream, and sometimes it's hard to describe certain things that are that specific or it's not that it's hard, but it's almost easier to just call the person up or do a sketch, and just explain it that way. But yeah, no, that's like I was gonna say when I worked before I wrote Little Bird, when I was working in documentaries, I was always the guy like doing a close up of like a leaf hanging from a spider web and just like turning in the wind, like getting in the edit bay, and it's like, why do we have 3 hours of just leaves? Like, what are we supposed to do with this shit? But it felt like in comics was such a great way to, almost a better way to capture it, because it can live for a long time in an inset panel. It's not something you would just cut to and then cut away. It can literally live there as you explore the rest of the scene. Yeah. But what were you going to ask, Danielle?
Well, I was going to ask if you had like a favorite, I guess, scene in general, but that's like, I feel like that's putting you right on the spot. But sort of like a favorite kind of like lighting effect. Like we were talking about lighting and so I feel like we've been talking a lot. I'm really curious what you like. I know this is a Q&A, but
that's really tough. There's a page with acts, and it's predominantly green and red, and I really like that.
The cover,
red.
The issue 3 cover.
I'm just looking to see where I've had the book out for book club, and I don't know where I've put it.
I'm flipping through
No,
now.
no worries.
I'm just yeah. Let me see if I can get it. I wonder if I can share it.
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah. It's like I think this stuff is fun where it's like, like I love the idea of sort of like if you have a specific scene or something, kind of like breaking it down, like sort of if you're curious about the process or whatever, like I feel like it's a really fun way to, I don't know, go about
Yeah,
it.
I think. Oh, here it is. I think what I like the most about it is there are a number of aspects about it. I really like Matt's coloring. I think green and red works together fantastically.
Mm-hmm.
But also the use of the panels. The panels are really different. I've sent it on the chat. I don't know if that'll come up for you.
Something popped up. Let's see here.
We're downloading,
Can you
allowing.
see it? This is like a big mystery to everyone watching, I guess. But
Oh yeah. Okay,
oh
so
yeah.
so I guess
Oh,
for
on
people
top of
watching, it's the scene where Axe and
Yeah.
Little Bird are like cutting their way through those weird soldiers with like the flesh inside of their helmets, the 12 essentially with their big swords and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is one of those ones where I got it back from Matt and I was like, it is so rare where I was like, I don't know if this works. Like as soon as I got it back, and then the more that I looked at it, I was like, no, this is perfectly weird, right? It's like
Yeah.
this kind of sickly green, and then
Yeah.
like obviously all the blood and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
just did such a great job with it. Yeah.
It's just so visceral. I think it's like the way that the panels are kind of disjointed as well, and you have the blood behind the panels. It's like it's it permeates the whole story, not just what you see on the actual page.
The only page I own of Ian's is the page that comes right before this, where it Axe cuts through the guy, and there's a sliver panel of when he was younger, which was something because that is the first, and the reason I wanted that page specifically is because that was the first page of art that I got back where I myself had like a specific idea that I wasn't sure was going to work. This idea that it's like he would just be, there's this random panel of him young, you know, and it represented like a sort of a leap in storytelling. I felt where it's like, man, I wonder if we could pull that off. And then when I saw it, I was like, it works perfectly. Like everybody who sees this is going to know that it's like he's thinking he's returned to his glory days, you know, and it's just like perfect fucking comic booking, you know. It's like we didn't need to say anything. It's completely visual, and so yeah, I've got that page up on my wall. But this scene that you're just describing that takes place immediately afterwards, I basically had nothing to do with this. I was just like, yeah, it's, you know, this happens in the fight scene, and I remember Ian being like, I have a really cool idea for this. Do you mind if I just go crazy? And I was like, yeah, please do. Action scenes are not really my thing. Like I try to tell a story in it, but like I take a huge step backwards and just let Ian and Matt do their thing. And yeah, it turned out.
Which
so
I really
cool.
appreciate because the thing is like writers in general are not good at writing action, right? Like because it is only a visual element, really, like the action, right? And I feel like one of the things I really like about working with Darcy is like he's like, well, why would I try to decide for you how this is going to work when it's like just do the thing that you can do best, in the same way where it's like Darcy's not going to ask me to, like, I don't know, write a chunk of the story, right? Where it's like, it's like, I think it's the trust element as well, right? Where it's like, he's like, I trust you to do a crazy action scene. And obviously, if it's if I have any questions or if he wants to see something, we'll discuss it. But it really is just kind of like a free for all kind of situation, which is really cool.
If I have anything to add for action, it's really specific. Like it's a very specific thing, like that axe cutting thing I just talked about, or that scene where like those soldiers have the umbrella bomb and it levels the forest as well as all the, like that was a specific idea that I had. But I'm just, there are writers who are better at writing action sequences. You know, like I saw an interview with Philip Kennedy, is that his name? He writes Superman right now, I think. Or maybe he writes the Hulk.
Philip Kennedy Johnson, is that his?
Yeah, does he write the Hulk right now?
I'm not sure. I think so.
Anyways, I heard him like read the portion of script for like an action sequence, and I was like, that's really good. Like there was a real cool evolution to it. It's not my strength, so I do try and have like a beginning and middle and end, so that it's some type of, there is an evolution to the action, there is a story, but I don't excel at describing how a fight sequence goes down. And Ian is so good at it.
You give me the beats that are important for the story, and then you let me do what I like have trained for, you know, I don't know, my entire life to do. It's like it'd be so limiting if you operated differently, right? I love that it just kind of gets to be a playful moment with the action. It's really cool.
Totally.
That's great.
What do you think, Danielle? I feel like we've been bouncing around.
Yeah, I've got like a list of questions, and we keep answering certain ones. So I'm just looking at the list to see what we haven't answered. Sorry.
No, take your time. It's fine.
So, as you've said, it's very character driven, and most stories have really conventional rules of like right and wrong and good and evil. And maybe I'm warped in my brain a little bit, but I found kind of tragedy in every character, not just the ones that you would assume. Like I could put myself in Bishop's shoes and kind of see how he's isolated. He's following these rules that he perhaps doesn't believe in, because you see moments of him almost yearning for something else, even though he's doing these atrocious things. So I can see the kind of tragedy and misguidedness in most of the characters. And it's also a dystopian fiction, so it's that blend of philosophical meets body horror in a way. How conscious were you of adhering to like storytelling and genre rules when you were creating the books?
That's all you, Jesse.
I'm not good at I'm not very good at genre, like figuring out what genres are specifically. I'm not good. I don't know why. My brain doesn't have an easy I'm dyslexic and neurodivergent, and I think that I've run into something there where it's like it's really tough for me to understand which rules go with which ones. I can memorize it, but I can't. It's tough to it's a really hard thing to explain. So I won't try. But I just I mean, obviously I'm conscious of that it's science fiction, but I'm never really clear. Like I even just like earlier this year, I was talking to a friend of mine, Lonnie Nadler, who's a fantastic writer, currently doing The Sickness, and I was like, is Little Bird and Precious Metals science fiction, or is it fantasy? Like, tell me what you think, because I actually don't know. And he very much felt like it was more fantasy than science fiction. I've always thought of it as science fiction, but yeah, I guess I don't really set out to write a specific kind of genre, so it just ends up being a mash of things. And I think that really, it's almost Ian's work that really solidifies it more as like a specific genre. Because it, like, if you were to just read my scripts plainly, they kind of read just more like dramas. You know, it's not that there isn't world building in there, but they are just inherently dramas filled with flawed characters. You know, that's what I like to do. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. And just in terms of like the nature of the characters, yeah, like I think of every character that I write down, I've sat down and had coffee with in my own mind, you know, and I understand them from that perspective, you know, and even Bishop, who's quite like, you know, probably the most two-dimensional. It's like he has all this childhood trauma that I have heard about, you know, where I know about it, you know, and I don't really write that stuff in the script, but Ian and I will talk about it, you know, like we'll just talk about the characters, and I'll tell him about their backstories and stuff like that, and then the real reason this can work is because Ian is, like, you know, talented in a wide range of ways, and the way that I think the thing I'm most grateful for is that he can really deliver that emotional side to the character. So even if the character is saying one thing, you might be able to see that they're feeling something else, and that is such a difficult thing to do as an artist, and he just excels at it. So it allows me to lean into that side of it even more, and it's the greatest pleasure for me as a writer, as those, you know, as you know, I'm, you know, I will, you know, it's, you know, there's that scene in Precious Metal that, like, it was one of the first scenes I ever had in mind, where Max is sitting down with what's her name? His ex. Sorry?
Celine?
No, not Celine. His ex. I don't know why I'm blanking on it. Anyways,
Celeste.
No, Celeste. Sorry. Yeah, there's Selena and Celeste, and they got. Anyways, the scene. They're sitting down. They're having tea or coffee, and they haven't seen each other in a while. And she's like, "Where have you been?" And then like, that was a scene that was in my head, like, right from the beginning, and I was always just so excited to get to that scene. Those are the scenes that really, you know, that get me up in the morning.
I love that scene.
Yeah, it's a beauty.
There was so much to work with as an artist in that scene, where, like, just like, I think you and I hopped on the phone about it too. Just I just got the feeling that you were going for, where it's like they're speaking past each other, right? Like they can't connect, and yet as the reader, like, you really want them to. And so there's objects between them, right? They're looking away from each other, right? It's sort of like what I'm obviously in the script says that they're sitting at across a table from each other, right? Like, there's the physicality of the table, you know, but, like, there's just so many, like, okay, so I'm rambling a little bit, but I love the way that Darcy will write things, where he'll give me exactly like you were talking about, where it's like a character is expressing one thing but feeling differently, and also has a third motivation that, you know, the reader is not currently aware of, right? And I love that, and I feel like, I could be wrong, but I feel like it really subconsciously works its way into the artwork, where, like, I will, and that's why we have so many conversations, because I'm like, well, what is going on with this character, right? Like, give me a little more. And, you know, Darcy's very good at kind of waiting for me to ask that, and if I need it, right? And then it's just this, like you said, like, he knows the world, he can walk through it, right? So it's this endless sort of description.
Yeah, then I won't shut up
really
for 2 hours.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, dude, Daniel, the amount of times that Darcy and I have been like, all right, we can talk, but it has to be 15 minutes. And then literally 2.5 hours later, we will get
Two and a
off
half
the
hours
phone being
later.
like, this is great. I'm so happy we did this. Right.
I'm,
And I'm
I'm
like,
finishing it like
for everything.
running to a dentist appointment, you know,
Yeah.
just like, and then,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's that stuff is a ton of fun. I love that, you know, and then it becomes clear later on what her motivation, you know, that she was under a different kind of pressure, you know, during that conversation too. So yeah, that stuff is super fun. Can't remember what the question was, but
I
yeah.
think it was about sort of the characteristics, the
Oh yeah,
characters and how they exist outside of like a moral area. Is that
yeah,
fair?
yeah,
Yeah,
Danielle?
yeah,
they're all morally grey and misguided, so it's just an interesting.
yeah. And it's just, you know, that's, you know, like everybody, that's everybody, you know, that's everybody, you know, and some people are better at putting on the show than others, you know. Some people are better at hiding the pain. Some people are better at pretending they don't make mistakes, you know. You know, you really see it in social media, these people that are like held up as like, you know, these you know, godlike figures, and you know, all this celebrity culture and all that. And it's like and we're all just so deeply flawed. We're also capable of the most beautiful things. We're also capable of the most horrible things, you know. And so much of it is just, you know, what life allows you to, you know, which version of yourself are you allowed to be, you know. And so yeah, so I try to get that across, and it only works because Ian can do it. That's the other thing. And I write a lot about kids, and I also look at characters as being at every age, you know. And like when I look at a character who's 40, I also just innately think about them when they're 12 and when they're 87. Like I try to see the whole, you know, picture, and I try to work that in. But yeah, so thank you for seeing that, I guess, and that's really cool. I never know what comes through, so that's interesting.
Yeah, I've probably I spend too much time reading comic books, but I like to look into I like to look into the characters, and as you say, we're all flawed. So it's a nice way to you're reading this otherworldly science fiction fantasy story, but at the same time you're reading a really grounded story at the same time. So I just find that balance really, really interesting. Um, I'm just seeing where we're at. So I think we've got a couple of Ian geared questions. So obviously your art is so detailed. Like I've seen photos of your studio before, and they're taller than I am sometimes. How do you develop such a unique style like that? Do you have any challenges of like maintaining that intensity when you're working on pieces that are so big or so small and intricate?
Um, so it's a good question. I think that uh, there's definitely difficulties sometimes, but I think that a lot of the reason why I do that type of style is that it does allow me to fall into like a weird flow state, like it's sort of a Zen feeling. And I think a lot of it has to do with sort of like coping mechanisms that I developed early on, you know, in childhood about sort of like disappearing into a world, you know what I mean? And I think there's certain aspects of like the longer that I can stay in that world, the more there's a feeling of connection. I don't know. So I think that sort of uh, in terms of learned behavior, there's a lot of like adaptive mechanisms that make me sort of draw this way. And then I think that a lot of it is also I really love how it looks in the end. right? You know, not all the time, but like a lot of the time, like the more time that I can put into a thing, with precious metal, and I tried it with Little Bird. It was a little more difficult, just given certain life things. But with precious metal, I was like, every single page, I'm going to make sure that it's the best I can do, given where I'm at. Right? Like, I don't want to look back on any of the pages and be like, you know what, I could have spent more time here. I could have done this a little better. Right? So trying to be as honest as I can with myself about that type of work makes me draw more, spend more time, add more detail. I think the other thing too is like, when I see artwork that is incredibly clearly time intensive, it makes me connect with it more, right? Like I don't want like I don't want frivolous detail, right? Where it's like, oh well, you're not actually adding anything, right? Like, this is just, you know, I don't know who that's for, but like, if it's world building stuff, if it's a thing where you're like, oh, now I feel more connected with the work, then that's what I really gravitate towards. Like, people who are to an unhealthy degree devoting themselves to the thing that they care about, right? Like, I admire that, and maybe that's unhealthy, I'm not sure, but it's certainly something I really enjoy in the artwork that I look at. Um, I feel like I missed another part of your question. Can you repeat it, if you don't mind?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, my eyes are straining on the light.
Oh, no worries.
Did you have any? You've kind of answered challenges. How do you go about developing, like, you have such an intricate style, and obviously you say that you work and you build upon it, but what kind of visuals are you influenced by and things like that?
Also, can I
Yeah,
add on to that? And maybe I don't want to take this in a different direction, but like there is a visual evolution between Little Bird and Precious Metal. Like, it did change. I don't know if that's kind of what you're getting at, like how did you get to where you're going, or
Yeah.
if that's not at all what you were thinking about, then don't
No,
just
yeah,
ignore it.
that's a
no,
good question.
I like it. I think that oh my God, I'm so distracted today. It's been a long day. I was in Muay Thai. I was sparring. I stepped back and my ankle just exploded, and I tore a bunch of ligaments in it. So
Oh
I've been
no.
hobbling around all day. I just did a Kickstarter thing. My mind is kind of all over the place. Can you please repeat your question, Danielle?
That was
Yeah.
my fault. Sorry.
No, no, no. No, it was good. I like that as well, and I'll get to that. I think it's a good idea.
So how did you develop your unique visual style? Do you have any
Oh,
kind of
yes.
influences?
Yeah, I mean, I have. I think anyone who loves Mobius will see a lot of that influence there. Mobius, I think one of my biggest influences, and pretty clearly, is Frank Quietly. You know, I remember reading All Star Superman and just his transformation at like a pretty influential age. I don't know how old I was, but his transformation of Clark Kent into Superman, just being like, oh, what he's doing is having these characters act like their physicality like is so well observed that this is how a human being would move through the world if they were attempting to disguise who they are. You know, he's hunched over, you know, all this stuff, and the transformation to Superman with the shoulders back, like the way he'll do like sort of feet, like for Bizarro, like the feet pointing inwards towards each other to just like indicate sort of like an imbalance in general, like so cool, so observed, you know what I mean? Like, you can really, they feel real. And I think that things like that are huge influences on me, where I want the characters to feel like they could step off the page, right? And that's really important to me. And then I think that what you were saying, Darcy, as well, is like, I definitely feel like there's a difference in this style of Little Bird to Precious Metal, where like there's a consistency, which is, you know, the mark making and a lot of the figure work. But I think that I was really trying to, with Precious Metal, like I was saying, like make sure I never stepped away from a page without feeling like it was the best I could do at the time. And I tried to do that with Little Bird, but there were just things that got in the way, just, you know, life. And I
Yeah.
did my best to make sure that with Precious Metal that wasn't the case. So it's even more detailed. It's even more crazy. Hopefully, it feels more observed and real. Yeah.
I think so. I read it. I think it's fantastic.
Thanks.
We've answered so many questions, so we're just towards the end of it. Were there any scenes or ideas or characters that you loved but had to cut from the story? Is there anything that you still think about that never really made it onto the page?
There's so many. Probably a hard
Yeah.
one to answer, Darcy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess nothing specific other than I kind of fall in love with the characters, and so I just want more of them, you know. From Precious Metal, like Selena Chen is a character I could just write forever, you know. And she has such an interesting backstory that we only just get like a little snippet of, between her and her father. And yeah, there's a lot. There's this. I could just write. I could write another 7 books in that world, you know. So but nothing specific. I think that there is a story to be told, between issue. There's a Little Bird book too that we hope to do one day, and that will sort of complete the larger saga, which would include Precious Metal, Little Bird 1, and Little Bird 2. But there's also a really cool short story that takes place in between issue 4 and 5 of Little Bird. So we do jump around in time, but in there, that's there's a 6-month jump from 4 to 5. And there is a really cool short story in there that I've always had in mind that I'd like to do, you know. And that's Little Bird specific. Yeah.
What about you, Ian?
Is there like more story to tell? Like that things that we had to cut,
Yeah.
or that we wanted to expand on? I mean, I think that visually there is just certain things where you're like, we have to finish the book. But like ideally we'd add 50 extra pages of just sort of like vibe, you know, where it's just like, it just feels like there's more world, there's more feeling to everything, you know. And I think Darcy did a great job given the page count of making that the case. But, you know, there's always more that we could do, you know, like just to, you know, more of the city, more of 12, more of Bishop, more, you know, more of all of these scenes. But that's sort of a never-ending thing, right? Like at a certain point, you gotta. But it is really like it's a great question because it's so hard to know, you know, like. And this, I feel like story-wise, is definitely more obviously Darcy's, you know, thing. But like, we were very okay with adding extra pages, and I think that we both did a great job of being like, you know what, we'll add this, but we do need to finish this book at some point, you know. So it was certainly hard, and I think that I'm happy with all of the visuals we included, and I think that I would have loved to have included more, but I don't know if I had more energy in me to do more book. I don't know. It's a hard question.
Yeah,
It's a good question. Yeah.
I can think of maybe like 4 scenes where I feel like in retrospect we could have maybe used a page or two so that they breathe a little more, but there's no, like Ian said, there's just no way, because it was already, maybe there'll be like an absolute edition one day where like we add 8 pages, when it doesn't feel like like such a big task, but like no, pretty much it's all there, and it's all, it is sort of an ensemble in a way. Like it's very much Max's story, but there are lots of characters, and it's, you have to make the cuts to keep the story moving along that line, and not get taken off in too many directions.
Oh, that's great. So the last question I have for you is, when you look back at Precious Metal and Little Bird, what do you hope readers take away from it?
Good question.
Good one.
I got to think on that for a second.
I was just going to say, you go first so I can think.
All right. Yeah. I'll go. I think that I really like what you said about the ambiguity of the characters. And I think one of the things that I really love about the story is that, and this is the case with people in general, is that we're always in our own blind spots. We can never really see ourselves, like the entirety of ourselves, especially how we maybe are perceived, or like our wants and needs are so much more apparent maybe to the people around us. And I love that the characters in the book are like, they're doing their best to live in this world and to follow what they think is real and true, and yet we get these interactions between the characters of one character just witnessing the other so much more purely and having such a better understanding of them. And I feel like that's, I don't know, it's a really, I think it's incredibly well observed, and it makes me really happy when I read it. I hope visually that people just are excited by it, like where it's like hopefully you pick it up and it's like an undeniable thing where you're like, oh my God, like someone clearly cared a lot about this visually, right? And then you read the story and you're like, oh my God, they both cared, and the colorist, the letterer, everyone involved, right, is like killing themselves to make the best possible thing that they can make. Like I love that is an object that's in the world now, and I hope that if people read it, they feel the amount of like what, blood, sweat, and tears, like the amount of time and effort and care that we put into it. That's what I guess what I hope people take away from it and enjoy it. You know what I mean? Like it's a
yeah, there's some heavy material in there, but I do, at the end of the day, I do want people to enjoy it.
But it's also fun, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it is.
Story.
It's super
really
fun.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's like the sort of like, like I'm not blind to, criticisms, and I, there are sort of criticisms that it's like, it's too hard to understand, or, this and that. And I'm not oblivious to that. But I think for me, I'm okay with it. That never, hurts my feelings, or, distracts me or deters me. Because at the end of the day, even if it's for a smaller audience, I'm trying to write I'm trying to give 70% of the story and then create like an outline for the 30%. It's not like there's nothing there. There's a shape to it. There's a form to it. It is all there, but people have to sort of invest themselves and invest their own imaginations to sort of complete it. And I think that that's what I hope people do, and I hope people enjoy doing that, having fun, because I find that really fun. At the end of the day, I think for both of us, we're just making books that we want to read, and both of those books are just books that I would want someone to make for me, so that I can sit around and put the little clues together and fill in the gaps and invest myself in a way that I might not always get the opportunity to do. And yeah, so I guess that's what I hope. They're both, I think they're both sincere, and they're also puzzles. And I hope people enjoy putting the pieces together. That's what I think I hope for.
Yeah. I think that stories hit us differently at different points in life. So the people that read it now who may be a little bit lost and don't understand it might revisit it at a different point in their life, and it might just, those pieces, they might just fall into place.
Yeah, if they don't recycle it or take it to the thrift store, hopefully they revisit it. And I think that's true. And you know what? I found that of so much music that some of my favorite albums are albums I hated, actually. On first impression, it was just kind of like, what is this? And then you listen to it like the fourth or fifth time, and you go, wait a sec, is this the worst or is this the best? Like, because I love it now, So I think that's just true of like art in general, is that I think when you make anything to not with the specific intention of satisfying people, that that the work can sort of reveal itself to you in pieces, and I think I know that sounds like I'm patting ourselves on the back, but I just think that I think that we are sort of making stories that, well, Daniel already said it perfectly. It's like they can be discovered at different points in time, depending on where you're at too. So yeah, hopefully, I don't know.
Thank you for taking like nearly 2 hours out of your days to chat with me about this. I've had a really nice time.
Me too. This felt like because I think we said it was going to be about 30 minutes, but this just felt like the way that Ian and I's conversations feel like, where it's like, yeah, no, just 15 minutes, and then 2 hours later. Yeah. So it's perfect. Yeah. No, it was great.
Well, thank you for including me. I've had a really lovely time.
Yeah, have us back. I mean, this is great. Thank you.